We'll wait for 5 We'll wait for 5 minutes, Dr. Ken, before we start.
Well, let me just give a little bit of housekeeping because it's also not fair on those who've taken the trouble to be on time. Okay, so
I need to introduce you, Dr. Ken. So when do you want me to introduce you?
Well, you can do it now if you like.
Is that fine? I'd rather we had
Yes.
some more, but if you say
it's okay. It's being recorded, so it's perfectly okay.
All right. And since I have my own dear friend, Dr. Shalini here, and we have Dr. Anju and a whole lot of other very important people, I'm very happy to start. A very good morning, everyone. I welcome our guests from Oman and India. I don't think guests from Pakistan, Iran, Maldives, or Kingdom of Saudi Arabia have joined yet. So welcome to all the people who found time to be here on time. And I trust you all are in the best of health and spirits. With immense pleasure, the Departments of Microbiology and Immunology and the Department of Medical Education and Informatics, College of Medicine and Health Sciences, Sultan Qaboos University, in collaboration with American Society of Microbiology, invite you to attend an important workshop on Zotero. Zotero is a free reference manager. It will be conducted by our very own faculty, the distinguished Dr. Ken Masters. Many of you already know him. He is instrumental in creating our numerous Google Forms in the study, which is called DASH to protect antibiotics. He is Associate Professor, Medical Education Informatics Department in our own college and our university. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Ken Masters. He has been researching and teaching in medical education and medical informatics for about 20 years. He uses Zotero in his research and teaches the uses of Zotero to medical and biomedical science students at Sultan Qaboos University as part of their degrees. He is extremely self-effacing. He's just told me a little bit about what he's done, but we all know his body of work is much more than what I'm just going to be telling you. He has authored and co-authored several AMI guides and serves on AMI's Technology Enhanced Learning Committee. So what is AMI? It is the Association for Medical Education in Europe. It is a worldwide organization with members in 90 countries on 5 continents. AMI promotes international excellence in education in the health professions across the continuum of undergraduate, postgraduate, and continuing education. During the COVID pandemic, he made online teaching easier for all of us in the College of Medicine and Health Sciences. We were fortunate to have the right tool, that is, we had Moodle, and we were very fortunate to have the right resource person to guide us in using it optimally. And of course, we had the right administration who encouraged us to adopt best practices. It was an extremely stressful time when we had to come to grips with new technology at our age, but Dr. Ken made the transition extremely easy for us. Thank you so much, Dr. Ken. I'm delighted to tell you that he is a key member of our study, a multicentric study to promote antimicrobial and diagnostic stewardship in the management of UTI, an experiment and mentorship to expand the One Health concept, which has since been nicknamed DASH to protect antibiotics. I know our audience is going to have a very fruitful couple of hours learning how to install and utilize Zotero. It is an amazing tool, and I hand you over to an amazing teacher. Over to you, Ken.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Meher. Okay, before we get started, I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping. Firstly, can I ask that you turn off your cameras just to save on bandwidth, because that can be a bit of a problem. This is being...
Let me just take one picture with everyone's camera on.
Okay.
Would you mind everyone opening your camera for a minute, and we'll just take a quick screenshot. Everybody can take a screenshot on their own. So it becomes their, personal. Hello everyone. It's lovely seeing all your lovely faces. Yeah, just open it quickly once and I'll take one quick screenshot and then we close. So I'm going to start. The others, I'm going to wait for one more minute. Let's see if the others do it. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. Sure. Dr. Adila, are you there? Savita, Chinnu, Dr. Chinnu, Dr. Fatma, everyone. Just one more second. I'm going to take one more screenshot. Dr. Ken, sorry about that. But this is so valuable for us to see the lovely faces behind the screens. So that's it. Over to you, Dr. Ken. Thank you,
Okay,
everyone.
fine. Thanks very much. Okay, so the first thing is that I do need you to have installed that plugin. If you haven't, we can take a few minutes in the workshop just to check that people have everything installed. But we won't be able to spend too much time on it. So that's why I do have this. I'm just going to share my screen again for a second. So if you can, while I'm talking and while I'm just doing a little bit of the housekeeping, if you can go to that URL or you can snap that QR code, and you will see that there's a document there. And as I say, if you do have problems, then we will be able to spend a few minutes just to make sure that everybody has got that, or as at least as many people as possible. But yeah, if possible, do it now, please. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Well, in fact, I might as well leave it up there while I'm just talking now, because firstly, I'm also going to turn off my camera because I know it can be a bit distracting. So, or maybe I'll leave it on for the time being. But firstly, once you've got that installed, then if you go to that Google Drive link, you will see that there are a couple of other documents as well, and we will be using those documents during the workshop. And then also this recording will go into the workshop. And I have other notes. I've detailed notes in a Word document that I'll be working through, and that Word document will be put in as well. So that will appear on your screen, and you don't have to worry about taking down extra notes if you know, because you want to be able to concentrate on what's going on the screen. There was also a little bit of a hiccup because about 2 weeks ago, Zotero upgraded from version 5 to version 6. So if you installed Zotero more than 2 weeks ago, it's quite possible that you've installed a slightly older version. If you installed Zotero just in the last week or so, the chances are you've got the new version, so that's okay. When I'm going through the workshop, I will also take into account the fact that some people might have the old version, and so those people might have to just be brought up to speed quickly. The updating is generally quite quick. All right, so I will be going through step by step, and please try to follow as I'm going through. If you do fall completely behind, if you lose connection and then are only able to come back later, don't panic. As I say, it is being recorded. I would recommend then that you simply watch what we're doing so that you can learn as we're going along, and then watch the recording afterwards and catch up like that. We will be taking a break, at least one break. So, you know, and just to give you a 10 minutes break away from the screen, tea, coffee, whatever. So don't worry about that. And if you do have any questions, then you can use the chat. I see Simi does ask what plugin. Okay, so you do need to, if you go to this URL on the screen, then you will see that there's a Word document there. And if you open up that Word document, it will explain how to install the Zotero plugin. Okay, and it's a plugin that gets installed into MS Word. So I'll be talking a little bit more about that. I'm aware that that might have given a few, problems to a few people. So I'll start off in the early part of the workshop, just reminding you about that. Okay, so I'm just going to turn off my video so long. All right, so let's get started then, and looking at what it is we are going to be doing with Zotero. This is the Word document that I was saying. This is the more detailed Word document, and this will I will go through this. I'm going to be going through this in quite a lot of detail. And this is a document that will be put into that Google Drive area as well. All right, so let's get started with a little bit of background as to what Zotero actually is. Right? And I'm going to be reading through quite a lot and then jumping across and showing Zotero and then coming back to the document, just so that people can actually stay with me and can see where I'm getting my information from. And sometimes it's easier for people to have text on screen and hear the voice, especially if your audio is not so strong. So Zotero is a type of software called a reference manager, all right? And quite simply, it helps you to manage your references, and it ensures that whatever referencing style you're using, your references are correctly listed. Now, if we just stop there, those of you who've been doing research, those of you, I'm sure you've studied at university, and I'm sure you can remember the nightmare of trying to get simple things like your referencing list correct and putting in the correct, whether it's a full stop or a semicolon, and does the date go before and does the date go after, and then you get it all set up, and then they say, oh no, hang on, sorry, did we say you're using Harvard style? No, we meant Chicago, sorry. And then you do it for Chicago, and then someone says, oh no, hang on, in this department we don't use Chicago, we actually use the Vancouver, and we're using this particular version of Vancouver as well. And then you have to change everything, all right? And that's a complete nightmare. And also then at the same time keeping track of all your documents that you know that you've cited this document, you know you looked at it, somebody queries, are you absolutely sure that that's what that document said? And now you have to go and try find it again, and you've got it somewhere on your computer, but you really can't remember where it is, all right? Zotero takes care of all of that for you. And it's free, and it's available for Windows and Mac, and if any of you are using Linux, then it's also available for Linux. I do have to say that I'm focusing on the Windows. That's the version that I'm using. I don't have a Mac, so I can't do any kind of troubleshooting or anything like that. But as far as I know, it functions in much the same way in Mac as it does on the Windows. Okay, so I've spoken about this this plugin that you have to do. So what you really need to do, if you haven't yet done it, then please do it. You can listen to me talking, but the first thing that you would want to do is you'd want to close MS Word, and then you can go get the setup file, right? And you go to that URL. I'm just going to switch quickly so I can show you live as well. Let's go there, open up a new tab, and you go there. So those of you who installed Zotero some time ago, you will have seen that it was Zotero 5. It's now Zotero 6, and you download Zotero, and then you install Zotero in the normal way that you would install any software, and then you launch it. And I will talk about what it actually looks like when we open up and what settings you have to do. I'm going to open up mine right now, just so that you can get an idea. You can see I actually have two versions. The one I use for my own work, the one I use for teaching, and that's what I'm going to be using now. So I'm going to just click on that and open that. Right. Don't worry if my screen is a little different from yours. But I'll talk about sort of layouts and things like that just now. But you can have that open on your screen if you wish. Okay, we go back to this Word document. So the Zotero might offer to open up another browser tab, or it might open up that browser tab. You can just ignore that for now and go directly into the Zotero app and maximize the windows that it completes your screen. But if you do want to have a look at what I'm doing and the Zotero, then you might want to reduce the size depending on the size of the screen that you are using. You will also see that there's information about a browser connector. You can ignore that for the time being. We will return to that later on. I don't want to get things too complex at this stage. Now, to install, to check that Zotero has actually been installed properly, in addition to the installation, Zotero works as a plugin in MS Word. All right. And so before you continue, you need to check that you have installed it correctly. Okay, somebody's asked, would you please give me the ID meeting? I'm not sure what that means. Perhaps you can rephrase that question. All right. In the meantime, I'm going to continue. So if MS Word is open, then close it, because you will need to reopen Word so that it can check that everything has been installed properly. And when you reopen Word, then you have a look, and I've grayed out these tabs that I've got here, but you should see a tab that says Zotero. And in that Zotero tab, you will have a group like that, all right? And if we look at there it is on my screen there, and we can see that we have the group there. Okay, so I know it is a bit frustrating for those of you who have been able to do this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pause, and I'll pause the recording just for about 2 minutes, so that if people don't yet have this, then they can do this. Otherwise, if they're prepared just to go along, then they can watch what we're doing, and then they can return to that. I can't increase the volume. The volume, as someone has asked me to increase the volume, you will need to increase the volume on your computer. All right, so please just increase the volume on your computer. So I'm going to pause for 2 minutes, and then I'm going to continue. So I'm going to stop sharing so long, and then I'll pause the recording. If you do have questions, then you can ask at this stage while we're waiting. I'm just pausing the recording, so if people are watching the recording, they don't stare at the screen for 2 minutes. Resume the recording. All right, and let's get started then, or rather, let's continue. So when you've got Zotero up and running, the first thing that you want to do is to make sure that you have registered, and it's a fairly straightforward process. Okay. If you originally installed version 5, then when you open Zotero, you'll be prompted to upgrade to version 6. So then please just select the upgrade, and you go through that process. But as I say, if you've done it in the last 2 weeks or so, then you are on version 6 already. Okay, now a really important part of Zotero is that you can get access to your data wherever you are. All right, and you can then share your references with fellow researchers. So it's really great if you are the kind of person that moves around, and you're sometimes working at the university, you're sometimes working at home, you don't always work on your laptop, you sometimes travel to other countries, and then they let you use their computers there, but now you need access to all your data. Also, many of you are going to be working with fellow researchers. Some of them might be in your own institution, in your own department, but in many cases, they're going to be working in other places. I've just finished working on a large paper, and 2 of my collaborators are in Germany, and 1 is in the UK, and I'm in Oman. And we need to share information. We need to make sure that the documents are kept up to date. And so that is done very, very easily through Zotero. But in order to do that, you need to make sure that you've set up a Zotero account, and that you can then synchronize everything. And the way that you do that is you go into Zotero. All right. So what I will be doing with many of these is that I will be reading through the instructions, and then I will show you on screen. Again, most of you will have already done this. I'm just reminding people if they weren't able to do this. So you switch to Zotero, and from the drop-down list, you select Edit Preferences, and then from the dialog box, Sync. Right, so you make sure that you're there, and then create an account. Okay, so what you would do is, as I say, you go to Zotero, Edit Preferences, and then Sync. Okay, so you want to actually sync that. Now, some of these things have moved a little bit, and my account has already been set up. All right, so I don't have the same thing on my screen. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you can create your account. And when you click on that create an account, by default your browser will open, and you need to create a Zotero username. And okay, you might find the odd noise. I have some cats and they sometimes like to speak, so I apologize in advance for that. Zotero will make sure that your username is unique, and then you have to complete some other fields and then the little captcha, and then you put in your email address. You do not have to use your institutional email address. You can use any email address. But please remember which one you've used it, because your account is tied to that email address. And then when you've done that, then you switch back to the dialog box, and then you log in, and then you set up syncing, and I will talk about the impact of that just now. Okay, so that then gets you registered into Zotero, and then you've got an area, or one of the most important things at this stage is that you've got an area on the Zotero web server. Now, another thing that you might want to do, and this is optional, so you can decide that you can do it now, or you can ignore it for the time being. But one of the things that you might want to do is set up a storage folder on your computer. And what is this? This is when you are working with Zotero and you're adding the references, you will be adding the actual documents also, all right? And the PDFs, and whether they PDFs or web pages or anything like that, they will be stored onto your computer. And you can decide that you can use the default area that Zotero will be using on your computer, or you might prefer to set up your own folder and specify exactly where you want to do it. I did it on mine. I've specified a particular folder, and the only reason I've done that is that because when I back up my laptop, I back up particular areas, and I wanted to make sure that that folder was in that area that I back up. All right. So if you feel, no, I don't mind, I'm quite happy to use the default area, then you can use the default area. Or otherwise, if you wish to change and choose a different folder, then you can do that. And you know, this is not a hard and fast decision that you can't change in the future. So if you decide to leave it as a default, but down the line you wish to do it, then you can do it down the line as well, right? And so what you do is you select custom, and then you browse to the folder that you wish to use as your storage folder. If it doesn't yet exist, you can create it, and then you simply confirm. You might receive a warning if you're using OneDrive, then you might just receive a warning, but that's okay. It's just advising you, especially if you're connected to the Microsoft auto update and things like that, that sometimes it might be a bit slow, but that's okay. You can accept that as long as you are aware of that. And then it's always best, I always recommend to people that when they change any of the settings, they close Zotero and they reopen it, and so that it can then read all the new settings that they've done. Okay. And then when you reopen, it'll probably ask you to confirm the synchronization, and you confirm, and we'll talk more about the synchronization just now. Okay. Now, what you've done when you've set this up is that you've created a folder for yourself on the Zotero server, and this will allow you then to share items with other researchers, or that you can move to other places and access your information. That information, that file area, is limited to 300 megabytes. So for the purposes of this workshop, that's enough. But if you are doing quite a lot of research, I think you're soon going to find that that 300 megabytes might be a little bit limiting, in which case you would probably have to purchase a new storage space. So that's something that you want to give some thought to, right? So you do have 300 megabytes, but you might find it running out rather rapidly, but it's not necessary for this workshop. Okay, then more with the viewing of with the preferences. One of the things that you might want to look at is when you are viewing the preferences. I beg your pardon. When you are viewing the PDF files of the document, there are two ways of viewing it, and this is something new in version 6. This didn't exist in version 5. In version 5, when you clicked on a PDF to open it, then it automatically used your default PDF viewer, which was probably the Adobe viewer. But in version 6, you have a preference that you can use the internal viewer that Zotero has, or you can use your external one. Okay, I'm actually going to be using the external one because I don't know what people are going to be using. So I've just chosen that because I think most people at this stage are more comfortable with their own PDF viewer. If you decide that you want to use the Zotero viewer, then you can do that. But what I would recommend is that you go into the preferences and you select general, and then you come to this area and it says open PDFs using. You change that default from Zotero to system default. Okay? And what that will mean is that it will then read from your system, whatever PDF viewer you have set up to read PDF files. Okay, if you're happy to have it in the Zotero viewer, that's okay. You can leave it like that. It does mean that when we are talking about opening up the PDF files, your screen will then look a little different from mine. Okay, but I mean, you would expect that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Zotero user interface and what it looks like. So if we come along here, we'll see that there are 3 panels, and up the top first we have some pull down menus, and we've already used some of them. All right, so we've already used the edit pull down menu and preferences, and we'll be using some of these others as we go through the workshop. There's a panel over here, and at the moment it's headed My Library. Okay, so the creators of Zotero are using a library as a metaphor. And so they don't talk about folders and things like that. They talk about the library, they talk about collections, but it's much the same thing as folders, and you'll get used to it once we start working with it. At the moment, it's just there with My Library, and that it has a few things, a few headings there, and nothing else in it. Then in this central area here, you will see that it's blank, but what will happen is that the references that you add will be listed in rows, much like a spreadsheet. Okay, so you will see columns and rows, and it will show the authors and the title and things like that. And depending what you want to have shown, these will be shown there. And then on this side, there's another panel, and when you have an item in this central panel and you click on it, then the details of that item will be shown in this third panel here. There are a few other icons over here, and we're going to be using these in the workshop. And then one of the most important buttons is right on the right-hand side is this little green button here. This is the sync button, and occasionally you will be syncing, and you simply click on it and it twirls like that, and it synchronizes. Okay, so syncing is synchronizing. It synchronizes what you have in your database on your machine with what is going on in your web area that you have been allocated in the Zotero server. All right, so that's a brief overview of the user interface. Once we start using it, it'll make a bit more sense. So let's get started. Let's add our first reference into Zotero. And there are many different ways of adding references. We're going to start off, and I'm going to be showing you different things. I do say here, you might want to, if you're working through this document by yourself, you might want to print out the next 5 pages, but for the workshop, you don't have to, because we're going to be switching back to this, and then you can watch what is going on. So some references need to be added to Zotero manually. Okay, although it's becoming less common because a lot of stuff can be added automatically, and we will have a look at how to do that. You still need to add stuff manually, because especially older documents, older textbooks and things like that need to be done. So you need to be able to do this, and you need to be able to work with the fields directly, because you often need to make corrections. So let's have a look at what we want to do. We have this textbook, and we've got the familiar items that we would want to record, the familiar bibliographic information that we want to record, and there are the details. And now we want to add this into our Zotero. Okay, so again, I'm going to be explaining here, and then I'm going to show you on screen. We're going to switch to Zotero. We're going to make sure that the My Library is selected. And then from the pull-down menus, we'll select File, New Item, and Book. So I go to my Zotero, I make sure that My Library is selected, and I click on File, New Item, and Book. Okay, and watch what happens. Immediately, my interface changes. It's got stuff at the top here. Now, by default, Zotero doesn't put the creator over there. I like to put the creator over there because I like to see my listing according to creator, which is actually author, right? Yours might be over here somewhere. You can see I can just drag and drop it across. So if yours is over there, I would, it might be a matter of personal preference, but it's probably nicer to actually drag it over there and put it like that. But whatever you want, that's okay. And now in this area, you can start adding the information. Okay, so what are we going to be adding? Firstly, we're going to add the title, right? So the title is Guide to Health Informatics, and I'm going to just copy and paste from here. Okay? And we can come along here in the title, or let me actually type it in, because I know that some of you are going to have to type in as well, right? Okay, so Guide to Health Informatics. And the moment I click off that field, it automatically saves it and puts the title in there. All right, so there we can see it's building up the item as I'm doing it. Then I'm going to put in the author's last name, okay? And the author's last name is Koira, all right? So I put in the last name first. Okay, because I have added this author before, mine recognizes it, but don't worry about that. I'm just going to just leave it like that, and then go to the area where it says first name, and you type in the first name. Okay. Now, if there's more than one author, then you add them by using the little plus button. You'll see there's a little plus button there. So that.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh. Okay. Yeah. Do keep me. Yes,
Hang on.
yes. I didn't know that I'm supposed to respond. I'll, yeah, do keep me. Do you want me to respond on the mail also? Or
it's going to.
Okay.
Okay. So sorry about that. So if you do wish to add another author, then you can add an author and you click on the little plus button, and then it'll allow you to add as many authors as you need, right? But if you've clicked on it by mistake, then you can simply click on the minus button and then it removes it. If this is an edited book, so it's not an author, then you could simply click on that little down arrow there and you can select the category from there. So if it was an edited book, then you could add that, all right? But in our case, it's quite simple. It's simply an author, first name and surname. And you can see then that the person's surname is being placed over there. All right. Then I'm going to be adding the edition, the publisher, the place of publication, and the date of publication. So I'm going to scroll back up to where I had that little text box, and we can put that in. All right. So the edition, it was the second edition, and the publisher is Arnold. And so type that in. You'll see that if you have typed in a publisher before, then it does pull it into a little drop-down list, which will then make life easier for you once you are adding other items. Okay, so London, and puts it in there. And my date of publication is 2003. Okay, so the idea is to, every time you click off the field, it automatically saves it onto your computer. You do not have to press Control S or anything like that. It's saving automatically on your computer. Okay, and then what I recommend is that even if you set the your settings to synchronize automatically, I like to just do it manually myself every now and then. So I click on there and I know now that my information has been uploaded and it's safe in the Zotero area. Okay, so that's then adding an item manually into Zotero. So you can see that it's really, really straightforward, nothing difficult about it at all. Okay, and now what we're going to be doing is we're going to see how to cite. All right, so I mean, because adding in the information into our library, well, okay, that's all right, but now we want to actually cite this. So I'm going to open up a new document and I'm going to just copy and paste this in there. You don't have to copy and paste the entire thing. You can just type in something small and watch what I'm going to do. All right. So I'm going to create a new blank document and I'm going to copy and paste that in. If you wish, you can just type in something small. You just want to get an idea that you would have written something that where you are citing, either quoting or referring to this author. And so you now wish to cite the author properly. Okay, so how am I going to do this? Well, what you do is in MS Word, again, I'm going to read through this and then I'm going to do it. So in MS Word, you put the cursor at the end of the line, you select the Zotero tab, and then from the Zotero section, you select Add Edit Citation. Now, if you're one of those people who have just recently upgraded from version 5 to version 6, you will get this little pop-up. Okay, and if you get the pop-up, then just click on Open Preferences, and it will then reset your preferences, and you'll just have to close MS Word and open MS Word again. But otherwise, so if you don't get this, it's okay. It means that everything is up to date. And if you get this error, then it means that you haven't opened up Zotero. Okay, so you must have Zotero open on your and you'll see it on your taskbar. Okay, so let's go through this process. I'm going to go in here. I put my cursor at the end of the line. I select my Zotero tab, and now I go here and I select Add or Edit Citation. Now, I haven't yet stipulated a referencing style. And so before I can add my first citation, Zotero asks me which referencing style am I going to be using. And in this case, select the Vancouver. We're going to come back to changing styles later on, but for the moment, select Vancouver and click on OK. All right, then it opens like this. It's showing you a dialog box where it's now asking you to type in something, all right? And you could type in from the title, but what we recommend is that actually use the author's surname so that you know that it's limited, because otherwise it's going to give you a rather long list. Okay, so you start typing, and in this case, the surname is Coira, so I type in the C, I type in the O, and then immediately it pulls up a list, and I can select from the list. Now in my library, I have only one item, right? It's showing me what I have in my library, and so I select that. And I click on it, and it appears like that in that little box. And then I press the Enter key. And before I press the Enter key, notice what's going on here, right? It's got the citation. That's where it's waiting for it. And I press the Enter key, and it appears. And you'll see there it is as a 1. Okay, don't click on that just yet. I will come back and talk about that just now. So this is, have a look at what we did. We got this screen, and I typed in the CO, and then because there was only one item, it showed me only one item. I then had that, I pressed the Enter key, and then I got the 1. Now I have a note here that if you click on the 1, the whole area is grayed. Okay, so if you click on that, you'll see that it grays that entire area. Now, that's because this is a field, and I'm not sure if people are familiar with MS Word's fields. If you are, that's okay. Then you recognize immediately what that is, and you understand the implications of that. If you are not, don't worry at this stage. I will explain a little bit more about MS Word's fields later on. So for the moment, just accept that the reason that when you click on it, it grays out that entire area is because it's a field, and we'll come back to that just now. Okay, so you've inserted your first citation. Now you need to create your list of references. Okay, so after your last line, you press Enter a few times, and then you write the word references. Okay, so we're just going to go here, and I'm going to type in references. Okay, give yourself a nice gap there. You can make that bold if you want. And that's where we're going to be putting in our references. And we put in our references, and we do it by selecting the Add Edit Bibliography. Okay, so you make sure that your cursor is down here. Don't put your cursor up there and then do what I'm about to do, because otherwise you'll have problems. Put your cursor there and click on Add Edit Bibliography. And look at that. All right, it adds it. Now there's nothing to be concerned about, like, do I have to use a comma? Do I put a full stop? When I write second ed, is it second edition, or is it 2ed, or is it whatever, anything like that? Here, do I have to have a colon or a semicolon, or do I have the semicolon there? Do I put the date there? Do I put the date at the beginning? I don't have to worry about any of that. All right, so Zotero takes care of that and just does it. So those of you who've been fighting with your manual references for so long, I'm sure you will immediately recognize the value of this. And those of you who have students and you're continually trying to teach your students how to do their referencing and what the referencing styles are, I'm sure that right now you can see the value of this. All right, and believe me, this is only the start. So let's have a look at what we've got. You will also notice that this is a field. Okay, and if you click on there a couple of times, you will see that it grays out the entire thing, right? So, and I will refer to this in more detail later on, but essentially the most important thing that you need to know about a field at this stage is that it's reading the information from elsewhere, and in this case, it's reading the information out of Zotero. Right? And the implications of that we'll see later on, is that if anything is wrong here, you do not change it here, because otherwise you're going to mess up everything. Okay, so at this stage, what I've got you to understand is this is how you do a citing, and then this is how you add the references. Now, just a note that when we're going to be adding new documents, and you do not have to each time say add or edit the bibliography, it will automatically add things down here, and you'll see that happening while we are working. Okay, so please do not create a new bibliography each time you add a citation. You create it only once, as you have done, and after you've created it, the new references will then be added. Okay, so now let's go in and let's have a look at something else. Now, we're going to add a file automatically. Now, I did ask you to go into my Google Drive. If you haven't got my Google Drive open, right, then I will just show you the URL again. So I'm just going to go here where I've got the URL. Right. So please go into my Google Drive. That's the URL. And you will see that there's a PDF file there. There are actually two PDF files. You can download both of those PDF files and just save them somewhere on your computer where you know you can actually get to them. And we're going to be using those two PDF files. Again, if you don't wish to use those particular ones, well, you can use most others, but they might not always do exactly the same thing that I'm doing on this. So I would recommend that you use those two. And I have made sure that I have chosen files that are open access files and that are freely available, that you don't need to have gone through a paywall or anything like that, so that we're not breaching any laws about illegal accessing of files. Okay, so I'll give you another half a minute or so to go into that URL, go into that Google Drive, please find those two PDF files and just download them and save them onto your computer. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you have been able to do that. And the screen is frozen a little bit here, so. I see people are, okay, hold on, I need to then just, please don't draw on the screen. Let me, okay. I'm just going to create a new folder into which I can put these documents that I'm going to be using, so that you don't get confused with other documents that I've got. Okay. All right. So let me just also disable annotations, because I see somebody just drew on the screen quickly, but probably by mistake. But anyway, so I've got these two documents that I have downloaded, and I wish to now add these documents into Zotero. So I go back to that Word document, So we've already seen how to add a reference into Zotero manually. Now we're going to be doing it if we've got the file, okay? And as I say, from my Google Drive, you please download the file, that McKim 2020, and you can save it in your downloads folder. Don't save it in the Zotero folder that you created or the default area, because Zotero will be putting it there automatically, okay? So how do we add this file in? Well, what you do is you switch to Zotero, and to the right of the help, you'll see a little plus button. And you're going to click on that plus button and then go down to store copy of file. Right? Whatever you do, don't choose the link to file. You select the store copy of file. And then you browse to the file that you've just downloaded, the McKim, and then you add it. So let's have a look at how we do that. I go into my Zotero library. Again, make sure that you've selected up there, all right? I click on the plus, all right? And I select store copy of file. And now you'll have to browse to the folder. Okay, I'm just going to Control C and Control V. It's an easy way to do it like that. And I then select the file, right? So that's, in this case, this is like if you've downloaded a PDF from anywhere else and you want to add it like that. So what do? You click on it like that, you add it, and then wait, okay? Just give it a few seconds, and it really depends mostly on your internet connection and the ability of Zotero to actually read information, because what it is doing is it actually reads the information. It's reading through, mainly through the DOI, and we'll talk about DOIs just now, but it's reading through the DOI. And what you will find is that if your internet connection is reasonable, within about, at the most, about 20 seconds or so, you will find that you have a listing. And look at this, there's the listing there. You've typed in nothing. All that you did was you added the file, and it's got all the information here, okay? And all right, so you can see that it has that information. You've added this and it's got this, and now you can actually look to see if it's got the PDF as well, right? And if you go along there, and you'll see there's a little arrow pointing to the right. If you click on that arrow, you will then see there's your file. Okay, so it's got the listing there, and then it's got your PDF file associated with it. So this is really, really nice. One of the problems I mentioned earlier is that you find your reference and then you're looking for the file and you can't remember where you stored the file. It's keeping it all together. And then if you want to have a look at that PDF, you simply double click on it, right? And because mine was set to the default, my system default, it has then opened up the PDF in my Adobe Reader, and you'll see there is the article. Okay. If you had set your preferences to open up in Zotero, then it would open up in the Zotero viewer, but you can see that it's opened up this article in my Adobe Reader, which I'm going to close. Okay, so that is the second way of adding an item into the Zotero library, right? And again, if you'd like, just click on your sync, so that you know it now gets uploaded into the Zotero web area. Okay, so we've done that. We've clicked on the little arrow and we've had a look at the document. And I do pose a question here. What happens if you had selected link to file? All right, so we just have a look at that. We have got store copy of file. If I'd said link to file, then it would still have everything here, but it would not copy the PDF into my Zotero folder. And the danger of that is that it forms a link to my file of where it currently is. And if tomorrow I have a look at this and say, oh, why have I got a copy of this file here? I don't need this file. I'll just delete it. Right? And I delete it. And then suddenly what will happen is the next time I come into Zotero and I try to open, that file can't be found because I've simply linked to it and I've then deleted that file. So now that link is obviously broken. Okay, so that is why please use that store copy of a file. Right, so if you're going to be using this method, then use that store copy of a file. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show how to cite this, and then I will pause to see if there are any questions. So let's say I want to now add information. I'm going to talk about McKim and McLean making this argument. So I go to my original document, right? And I'm going to type here, sorry, McKim, and let me see how that is spelled. I type that, and now I wish to cite that. Okay, and I'm going to cite it in exactly the same way. Watch what I do. I click on Add Edit Citation. I start to type, and I'm going to start to type one of the surnames, all right? And I put in MC, and immediately it does a search in Zotero. It finds that one, and it is there for selection. I select it, I press Enter, and it puts it in. And again, you can see the advantage here is that it's done the numbering correctly, it's listing them correctly. I don't have to worry about anything like that and about any of the problems with punctuation or anything like that. Okay, so I'm going to pause there for the time being, and I'm going to just well, in fact, I won't stop sharing. I'm going to just pause and go into the chat. You can either use the chat or your microphone. You can unmute yourself if you wish. If people have any questions on what I've done so far, then you can ask. There are other ways of adding references, which we will get to later on. So really just focus your questions on stuff that I've covered so far, please. Okay, so there are no questions. If there are questions while I'm going through this, then please feel free to interrupt and ask. Okay. So let me continue then. I mentioned briefly the concept of a DOI, and some of you might be familiar with what a DOI is, but I think not everybody is. So let me just explain a little bit, because this is a really, really, really powerful way of adding information into your Zotero. Okay, so what do? Most items that you will be adding to your library will be articles. You will be adding books and videos and things like that, but most are going to be articles. And many articles that have been published since 2010 and certainly since 2015 have a unique identifier called a digital object identifier, a DOI. Now, you're probably familiar that most books have an ISBN. Well, the DOI is like the ISBN, but it's for specific articles or even chapters in a book. In fact, now I've seen quite a few books have a DOI as well. And I don't want to predict, but I can see that the ISBN is probably going to become a little bit outdated, because why have an ISBN and a DOI when you can just have a DOI? So the future might be that ISBNs might fade away, but for the moment they are still there. But really at this stage, the DOI is used to identify articles, and especially articles and chapters. Yes, okay, somebody has a question, please ask your question.
Hello, thank you very much for the workshop. I have a question regarding the compatibility of this program with the other ones, such as EndNotes and Reference Manager, because we receive sometimes papers and we should process them for publications. Then different authors are using different softwares for management of references. This is one question. And the second one is to define a new journal styles in this program. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I'll deal with your second question first. What about new journal styles? We will actually get to that later on in the workshop, and I'll show you how to do that. As for the compatibility, yeah, there are a couple of reference managers, and for the most part, they are not compatible. So if you're collaborating with someone else, you all have to use the same reference manager. The thing about something like EndNote is that EndNote is not free. It costs, and it costs a lot of money. And if I remember correctly, EndNote sort of focused a lot of their stuff at institutions rather than individuals. So yeah, that was one of the reasons that I moved off EndNote, and I actually moved off EndNote. I moved on to Mendeley, because Mendeley a few years ago was really, really wonderful, was also open source, free, etc. And then Mendeley was then bought out by, well, I'm not going to mention the publisher's name. I don't want to badmouth any company or whatever, but let's just say that Mendeley was bought out by another company, and the way in which Mendeley operates for me is less than optimal. One of the major problems with Mendeley is that the database is actually encrypted, which means that you don't actually have free access, easy access to your own database. So the database now in Mendeley gets encrypted, and although you can change your password and set your password, you have to have a very good relationship with that company, because that company actually controls everything. And if that company decides that they don't want anything to do with you anymore, if that company corrupts your password, as has happened to me, then your research stops for a couple of days while you're trying to get this nightmare sorted out. So that was one of the main reasons that I moved then onto Zotero. But yeah, the bottom line is that everybody who's working on a project, you all have to use the same thing. You can easily export data. All right, so that's not something that I cover in this workshop, but you can export all your data out of Zotero into the more common file types, and you can also import from the other ones. You can import from EndNote, and you can import from Mendeley. In fact, I imported all my references from Mendeley into Zotero. I don't know how many. I had about 700 or 800, and yeah. Okay, so does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much. May I ask one more?
Yes.
Okay. About bulks of manuscripts or accepted papers that are going to be processed for publication, I would like to know whether we can export the Word files of these manuscripts quickly to this software and correct them quickly, or it takes so much time or difficult?
Well, no, when you construct your manuscript, every journal has their own way of actually doing things. So the basic document that you've got, you can simply upload, but every journal is completely different, and all the extra things they want practice points, or they want this, or they want that, or they want this in this format, whatever. Yeah, and at this stage, unfortunately, when you're doing that, you set yourself aside a morning, and that's how long it takes, and that's an unfortunate part of submitting into journals. I do talk a little bit about something that you can do here with the references and the fields before you submit into journals, but for the most part, you are tied to the demands of the journal. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Okay, pleasure.
Good
All right.
morning, Dr. Faizabadi. Just Dr. Ken, I just want to tell you that Dr. Faizabadi is the editor-in-chief of Iranian Journal of Microbiology. And it's
All
wonderful
right.
having him here with us. He's also one of our partners in the study.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good to meet you.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Okay, so let's go on then with the DOI, because sometimes you just get the DOI of an article. All right. Now, as I say in the document here, you don't actually have to know much about DOIs. They're just a few things that you do need to know. It's a set of characters. It has numbers and letters. It always starts with 10, and I don't know the history behind it. I don't know why it always starts with 10, but that it always starts with 10, and you'll see that becomes an important piece of information. If it's listed as a URL, then it will usually come immediately after this part, and you'll see that immediately after this part, you'll see a 10, and then it has the rest of it. And the idea is it identifies an article, and I put this note in for when I'm teaching my students, just like your student number uniquely identifies you. It's an identity number. If you do wish to know more about DOIs, then there's a nice, useful Wikipedia page, and you can have a look at that. Okay, so in an article, you usually find its DOI in one of two ways. You look for a line that says DOI and 10, and then it has that following, or you look for a URL. Okay, and we'll talk about, like, if you're using PubMed and places like that, because often those places will show the DOI as well. But I'm talking about if you've got the article and you're looking for the DOI. So in both cases, remember that the DOI starts with 10. And when you select the DOI from the article, you select only the 10 and the characters that come after it. So what are we going to do? We're going to be using this article by who. So I'm going to switch to that article. I'm going to open that. And you'll see this is from the New England Journal of Medicine. Now, in the previous article, the medical teacher one, I go back to that, you'll see that the DOI is actually usually quite high up. You'll see it's written up here, all right? And then, in fact, medical teacher then also puts it over there. So they put it nicely where it's visible. Every journal puts its DOIs in different places, and you've basically just got to hunt for them. So this is New England Journal of Medicine, okay? And if you scroll down a little bit, you will see, essentially look in the area where it's got the bibliographic information, where it's got information about the authors or whatever. That's where you will find the DOI if the article has a DOI. If you can't find it, have a look sort of at the bottom of the page or somewhere there, right? But here we can see, here is the DOI. So we can see that that's what that's what I'm going to be taking, okay? And I do not highlight that entire thing, I highlight, and this is why I say it's important to know that it starts with the 10, because that's what we're going to be collecting, all right? So you collect that area there. There are no spaces or anything like that, and I'm just going to do a Control-C. Okay, so I switch back to my notes to say, what am I going to be doing here? I'm going to be going back into Zotero, and I'm going to be using a thing called the magic wand, and it'll open up a text box, and I simply Control-V the DOI into there. So I come along here, I make sure I've selected my library again, okay? And I come here to this little magic wand, and you will see that I can also add an ISBN and PMID and other things, but for the moment I'm concentrating on the DOI. So I Control-V my DOI and I press enter and I wait. Okay, now it's doing a searching on the DOI, and it does a search for the DOI, and then if you look there, it actually downloads the article as well, because in this case, the article is freely available. Now, one of the things that you will notice, I'm going to be doing a couple of things here. Firstly, it gets it from the publisher, okay? And the publishers often have very generic names on their papers. Some might just say the text, or in this case, full text, or the paper, or something like that, which is okay. But you know, you want to have a look at it, and you might have other files associated with this particular paper. So compare it to, for instance, there where the file is named nicely. Okay, and so you'd like to name this file according to these data, right? That's the important thing. So to do that, you on that PDF file, you simply right-click, and you get a little menu, and you'll see you get an item saying rename file from parent metadata. Okay, and you do it there, and that's what it does. And of course, when it's renaming on your computer in that folder that it's created for you. But you can see there it is. All right. So that's nice, and that's a nice quick way to download, and you get all the information. I mean, you can imagine typing in all these names and all the extra information. You don't have to worry about any of that. It just slaps that all in there. Okay. Now, you might not be able to access the final paper. So what I'm going to be doing here is that, I mean, I chose papers that I knew were freely available because for this workshop, but you might find that for some reason it can't access the article, your library doesn't have access to it, and but you have managed to download it. So let's say your library has access to it, but Zotero can't access it through there, so has not been able to download the article. But you do have the article saved already, and now you want to put it in there. So for the purposes of this workshop, I'm just going to delete this, and I simply delete it by highlighting it and pressing on the delete key, and I delete it like that. Okay, so it's as if it showed me all the bibliographic information because it downloaded it and it got it through the DOI, but now I wish to associate my file, my PDF file with it. Okay, and there are different ways of doing this. And what you can do is the way you can either use the paperclip above the title and then select attach stored copy of file, or right click and then add attachment, attach store copy of file. So what you do is you make sure that you select the thing that you want to attach it to. You can either use that paperclip, all right, and then attach store copied of file, or otherwise click like that and then add attachment, attach stored copy of file. And then you browse to where you had your file and you select it, open, and then it puts it in. And because it was added after all this information was put there, it will automatically rename it to the correct thing. Okay, so that's then another way. And when I'm adding information, this is probably one of the most common ways that I add information. You know, I find a file, I like to download it, especially if it's a report or something like that. I download the report, and then I look for the DOI, I slap the DOI and I give it a few seconds, and then that's it. It might find that report, it might not find that report, in which case, if it doesn't, then I just add it like this. Okay. And that's how you do it. Now, as I say here, many documents are open access. So if you find the DOI in a database, then Zotero may automatically download those documents for you. And that's nice and easy. And we'll see how to do that later, how to get it directly from PubMed. And there I talk about renaming the file name. And if you want to, you can actually just go and get this article. And I've put it here, but in the workshop, you don't have to do this. If you, those of you watching the video, if you want to, and I'll just demonstrate to you quickly, I can go there. I've got the article listed, and I want to, sorry, let me go back in here to my, I've been sent a URL of the article. I come along here. And again, you just basically hunt, and then I see, oh, okay, there's the DOI that I want. And sometimes when you're highlighting, you get extra information. You just get a little bit careful. There it is there, Control C. and I go along here into my library, come along there, make sure that I get rid of any other information that was around there, and I press enter, and then I wait and it'll come down. And in this case, again, see it says full text instead, and then I just highlight that and rename file from parent metadata, and there it is. And generally when I'm added a couple of these, I then just sync so that I make sure that I've got it. Okay. Zotero, like any of these other systems, it uses the external DOI upstream services. And in fact, what it does is it contacts web pages and it uses the information from there to get the data. But sometimes, you know, like any external system, that site might be down, might not be functioning. So sometimes you might get that error, and it says that there's a problem. It may be that you've typed the DOI incorrectly, so just check that you've got the correct DOI. But if you confirm that your DOI is correct, then it might just mean that yeah, the service is down for a bit, and so you have to wait. It is a bit irritating. It does happen. It in fact happened last week. Gave me a bit of a heart attack while I was trying to prepare these notes and confirm them. Yeah, it gave me then the opportunity also to get the error message so that I was able to show you what the error message looked like. So that can happen, and then you just have to be patient and wait for a couple of hours, and then the service comes up again, and then it can work, because that's an external service that all these systems use. All right. So let's have a look at adding some of our new citations, all right? Because we've we've added in the WHO article. So now in our document, we're going to do this. So what I do is I say, all right, immediately after the Koira citation, press the space bar and then write this, all right? So I'm going to, just to save time, I'm going to copy and paste. You can just type as you wish. What I do ask though is that you do it immediately after the Koira one, because I want to show you what we can do next. All right, so let's say I have that. I say WHO et al. Also support this view, and now you'll notice that I'm going to be adding in a citation. All right, and those of you who use Vancouver manually, you can see, oh boy, here comes the nightmare. Okay, because now that's going to be listed as number 2. And you've got to go through your 50-page document changing all the numbers. Okay, so let's watch what happens. All right, we go to add edit citation, and I type in WHO, and I get that one. Right, that's the one I want. In this case, it's showing me up both because I've typed in WHO and it's picking up that human over there. Right? But here it's obviously the author that I want. I select that and I press enter. And look at what it does. It puts it in there and it then changes the numbers, right? So automatically changes the numbers, because we know that using a Vancouver style is common and can be really powerful. Saves you on your word count and things like that. But the real nightmare with that is getting your numbers correct. And you insert something and it does this perfectly well, all right? So it simply reorders the numbers for you. Now, one of the things that you will want to do is you want to move the text, because now let's say we've done this and we realize, actually, no, I don't want it there. I want it there. Okay. So what you do is you highlight all the text that you want to move plus the citation. All right. You make sure that you've highlighted that as well. Okay. And then I'm going to Control X to get rid of that. And I put it there, and then I Control V. Okay, but now notice that the numbers are in the wrong field, in the wrong number, in the wrong order, I beg your pardon. But I've made that move. I'm quite happy with that. And then I come up to this area in Zotero and I click on refresh. And it goes through and it refreshes and reorders these things. Right? So it is important for you to remember that you can move those things, but when you do move them properly, Control X, Control V, and then you can then cut and paste, and then simply refresh. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do, I did promise you a break, so I think this is a good time then to take a break, and we are going to be talking about changing the referencing styles. Firstly, if the style is in the list, or and then we'll look at if the style is not in the list. Okay, so because we have been going for about an hour and a half, but let's take a break at this stage. I'm going to also pause the recording. I'll give you a 10-minute break. Okay. On my computer, I see 10:56, and I'll be kind and call it 10:57. So I'll see you back when mine says 11:07. Please check your time on yours, and I'll see you back in 10 minutes time. Okay, so I will pause this, and I will also pause the recording for those of you who are watching the recording, so you don't have to stare at the screen for 10 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Ken. That was an excellent session. I hope all our colleagues have been following you well, and they have.
Sorry. Okay, so welcome back, everyone, and hope you were able to have a decent short break. So we're going to then continue getting into Zotero and doing a little bit more complex stuff, and that was related to one of the questions that was actually raised earlier, was about the different styles. So let's start off firstly when you are using a style, and it's a fairly common style, but now you have to change to another fairly common style. All right, so far we've used the Vancouver style, but I'm sure you're aware that there are other styles. So for instance, the Harvard and the Chicago. Now the Harvard and Chicago, I hope you don't mind that I'm talking a little bit about this, because I do realize that people in this workshop, some of them might be quite new researchers, some of them might be more seasoned researchers. So I just want to remind that the Harvard and the Chicago style are author date styles, so they don't use numbers. And when the list of references is given, they are listed in alphabetical order. And this is one of the nightmares when you are trying to work on a document and you've got it laid out like this, and then suddenly you get told, sorry, the style has to change. So let's see what Zotero does. So the area that we use in Zotero is the document preferences, where we change the style. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be changing the style really simply to a common style, and it's going to be the Chicago 17th edition. Okay, so we come along here, we have our document, we get told we have to use the Chicago. So you go to document preferences, and you will see that there's a listing of styles. Now, I will probably have one or two styles here that you don't have, because I've been teaching this elsewhere as well. But for the moment, you should all have the Chicago 17th edition, all right? And you'll see that, in fact, even with that, there are variations. But we take this first one, Chicago style author date, and you select that, and then you click on OK, and watch what happens. Immediately, it simply reorganizes everything. Beg your pardon. So this is an author date style. Immediately it does that. Again, you don't have to worry about, oh, does this one have commas? Does it mention, is it two authors only? Do you have to have et al? When do you have et al? Be after 3 or after 4 or whatever? Does it use the ampersand or does it use the and? You don't have to worry about any of that. Some of the styles, the et al is written in italics. Some of the styles, it's not. You don't worry about any of that. And again, you'll see the date has moved from the end of the line to the beginning of the line. All that gets sorted out. In this style, article titles are in quotation marks, journals are in italics, etc. The DOI in this style gets shown. In the earlier Vancouver, it doesn't get shown. So we can see immediately again, this is really, really nice. If there's a change to a common style, it's there in the listing, and there we go. And you will see that it changes. Now, next complication, what if it's not in the list? Okay, so it's a fairly common style, but it's not in the list. And we're going to go for one of the Harvard styles for this. And this also raises a thing, you know, where people say, yeah, you must use the Harvard style. Now, strictly speaking, yes, there is the Harvard style, but actually there are many, many, many Harvard styles. And number of styles in total, I don't know. I actually don't know how many total number of styles there are. If somebody did a count and told me there were about 10,000, I would say that sounds about right. So you can imagine with all these styles, you simply need a reference manager. But let's have a look at getting a Harvard style that is not in our list, but we know that it's a reasonably common Harvard style. So we're going to go back then to our document preferences, and it's not going to be in this list. So then we're going to select this area called Manage Styles. And then it's going to open up a web page, and or rather, sorry, we get to the Get Additional Styles, and then it will open up a web page, and then we search for our Harvard. So I go to Document Preferences. I go to Manage Styles. Oopsie. I have found in version 6 that this sometimes happens, that it opens it up like that, and then for some reason it closes that dialog box. I think there's a slight bug in version 6. This didn't happen in version 5. So I think there's a slight bug in version 6 that when you first click on that Manage Styles, it closes this dialog box. So I'm hoping they'll fix that up. Version 6 is only 2 weeks old, so there's bound to be a few bugs. All right, so then we come to Get Additional Styles. And it essentially is loading from, I think this is a built-in web browser, but it's searching online, all right? And it's not a full web browser, it's just searching online, and it's searching for particular styles. And you can then type in the Harvard. Again, this is dependent on your internet speed. And you can see a large number of Harvard styles. I mean, this is just the number of Harvard styles. And yeah, so saying we use the Harvard style. All right, so let's choose something like this. This is a very common style, Cite Them Right 11th edition. Okay, and it's quite nice. It actually gives you an example. This is what it looks like. So we select that, Cite Them Right 11th edition. And then it puts it in there, and then you click on OK. Now, what I have also found is that if you've brought the new style in, it will not automatically make the change, right? And I don't know if that's a bug or if that's what they've decided in the design. It worked like that in version 5 also. So, but you then have to go back into it and then find the style that you got, all right? And so it's now from the list, and then you get it and you click on OK, and then it reorganizes it. Okay, so that's how you then get a style if it's not common enough to be listed in the default listing that you have here, but it is common enough that they know about it and it's on their registered site. Okay, so you can see that there's a list here, and occasionally I think what it does is it keeps a limit on the list, because occasionally I've seen sometimes a style is on the list and then it doesn't appear on the list anymore. And so what you can do is then you just go back into the Manage Styles and then you go get it again. All right. So that's if you want to get a style that is reasonably common and is registered with, well, I think it's on the Zotero site, but it's not in your main listing here. Now, we get to the particular question that was asked. What if a journal has their own style? Okay. Now, if they have their own style, then they should actually have a style file. All right. If they don't have their own style file and you have to type this in manually, well, then unfortunately, well, what you can do is you can actually take a style file that is close to it and you can modify it, but that's really the stuff that the journal should be doing. And unfortunately, there are a couple of journals that I know that their style of referencing is so complex that I tried to modify for one journal and it was just so complex I couldn't even do it. I've done it for one or two journals, but sometimes it's so complex, forget it, it's not going to happen. But if a journal or even your institution, which exists in my case, we actually have a style, it's a variation of the Harvard style that we want our students to use, right? And so we have a file and it's got a CSL extension. So the style file that you're looking for is a CSL extension. Now, the nice thing about this is that this can also be read from Mendeley. So if you have a style file that is that can be identified from or used in Mendeley, then that style file will have a CSL extension and it can be read by Zotero as well. This is an open access and an open source extension. You can open it just with a text editor. Unfortunately, some of the other reference managers are closed and they have their own proprietary extensions and they do not allow you to go in and modify. So again, that's a weakness of using those. Now, essentially, and I will go through the process, I will show you, but essentially, what are you going to do? If they've got the style file, then you get it from them, you download it, you save it on your computer, all right? But what you want to do is, the best is you want to actually save that file where your other style files are. It's just a really good idea to keep all your style files together. And they will be in different places. So in your PC, all right, have a look under in your C drive under users, and then you'll have your username, and then it will have the path to Zotero, wherever your Zotero information is stored. And then there's a folder called styles. In your Mac, that should be the path. As I say, unfortunately, I don't own a Mac. I had this checked by someone who does own a Mac, but things changed. So I'm hoping that that has not changed. So for instance, if I go in here, I just at the break, I had a look. If you'll see that there's my folder under, okay, and if I go back, there's my Zotero data. You can see I've got my Zotero data, which is my main area. But then this is the Zotero data that I'm using for this particular workshop. If I go into that folder and I go into styles, I will see there are all my style files. Okay, so if the journal has their own style file, or if your institution has their own style file, then what you do is you take that style file and you copy and paste it into this folder. Okay, that's where you want to copy it, and then it will actually be read, because then what you do is you go into your document preferences. Okay, let's just go along there. Just go back into that Zotero. Sorry, I'm jumping around with the different screens here. Okay, so I'm going to go into the document preferences. I select the manage styles. Okay, and then I go to this plus button. And then I go to where I've got that style saved. All right. So document preferences, manage styles. Again, you'll see this little thing, as I say, I think it's a bit buggy. So click on the manage styles. And then instead of going to this one, where we went just now, you go to this one, all right? Plus, and then you browse to wherever you've got your style file and you select it. Okay, I don't have an example showing here because I don't want to actually mess with mine. I've already installed the one that I was speaking about. There's one that I use there. This is one that our college uses. Okay, but this is enough to demonstrate. You browse to that file, and then you select open, and then when you select open, it will then appear in your list, and it's then permanently in your list. And if it does disappear, you know that you've got it in your folder where you've got your other style files. That's why I say really what you should do is be quite disciplined and make sure that if you add any new style files, then you add them into the folder where you've got your other style files. If it's not in a default path, because sometimes people have their machine set up by other people, and the path is not all that standard, then the best thing to do is just search on your machine, search for files with a CSL extension, find where that folder is, and copy any new style files into that folder. Okay. So before I continue, are there any questions? If anybody wishes to ask a question, please do so. I'll just pause for a little bit. You can either type in the chat or use your microphone.
Dr. Masters?
Yes.
Could you hear me? I have questions about DOI
Yes.
numbers. Some journals, actually the majority of journals are using DOI numbers at the end of references, but some still are doing their own job. I mean, they do not use it. What is the disadvantages of this if a journal does not ask the authors to put DOI? Or let's say, what is the advantage of having this?
Well, okay, so I think there are two issues there. The first is if the journal is not listing the DOI at all right, and this is a problem. What happened in the olden days, like when most of us were studying, like in 1970, 1980, 1990, 2000, there was only one copy of the document. You wrote your document, you probably didn't upload it. Your first documents might have been sent with mail, all right? And then we went through the whole process, and then we got to the stage where we uploaded documents, but there was only one copy of the document. And then things changed, right? Because when there was only one copy of the document, you could identify it reasonably easily from the authors and from all the other information, from the volume and things like that. But one of the things, of course, I'm sure people have noticed, is that authors sometimes when they write papers, their papers have similar sounding titles, and so it's easy to get confused. But one of the major things that went wrong was that you submit your paper to a journal now online, it gets accepted, and now it's sitting in the queue. All right. So I've recently had a paper that has been accepted, and I hope to see it online in about 2 weeks' time. But it's actually only going to be published properly in about 5 months' time. So when people cite that paper, how do they cite it? Right. And when it's finally published properly, how do they know, is this now another paper that this guy has written and he just happens to have the same name? Because, I mean, you can have the same title of papers, or is it actually the same paper, but just two different versions? And there might be, in some journals with the licensing, they sometimes allow you to have access to the author created copy, but not the final published copy. So now you've got 3 different versions of the same paper. And this is a problem. And so by having a unique identifier, you remove that automatically. I mean, I might find a paper online, but it's still in the early online, and I'm citing it, and I'm using Zotero, and I cite it, and now it gets published properly in with with a volume and an issue and a page, and I need to know for certain that this is actually the same paper. Right? I can look at that. I can look at that DOI, and I can match that up. So really, on the journals, the journals really should be having DOIs. And if you've got any input into any journal that is not using DOIs at the moment, put as much pressure as you can on them, because they really should have DOIs. And more and more, in fact, more and more styles, referencing styles, are showing the DOI as well, right? And it's one of the reasons that when we designed our style for our students, our style has the DOI, because sometimes you can quote something, and then you quote, or you cite two papers, and now you can't work out, are these actually two different papers, or have I by mistake cited the same paper twice, and I've got this muddled up in my Zotero database or in anywhere else. And the way that you check is look at that DOI. Okay, so if the problem is on the journal side, contact the journal, put pressure on them, get them to start assigning DOIs. It is a cost. It does cost to journals. It doesn't cost the authors. It costs journals. Journals are going to have to absorb that cost. And usually what they do is, if they find it too great, they'll simply increase their article processing charges and things like that. If you are using a particular referencing style, well, you are bound by the journal's referencing style. But again, you can ask them, please, can you change your referencing style so that the DOI shows? Because using referencing styles with the DOI is always much nicer, much nicer. Okay, so does that answer?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, so you believe that it should be compulsory for all authors who are referring to put the DOI at the end of the papers for all references?
Well, I would certainly want that, yes, but you are bound by what the journal says. If the journal says no, we do not want DOIs, there are some journals, some very, very respectable journals actually, that do not show the DOI in the references. Then there's nothing much that you can do that, because even if you then do submit that, they will remove that. But when you're working together with other authors, and you're talking about now, if you're working in Zotero, then yes, please, in your group, I would strongly recommend that you tell your authors. You'll see that it's an item in the DOI. Okay, if you just go there, you can see that it's got the DOI there. You tell your authors, yes, please, you make sure that the DOI is there. So if they've had to add this manually, then they put the DOI there. If they've added it automatically, it probably would have put the DOI in anyway. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, pleasure. Yeah, we're working with a group of authors, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but it does take sometimes quite strong management. Okay, so let's see what happens now when you reuse a reference, okay? Because now we want to come along here, and I'm still using the one of the author dates, okay? In fact, I'm going to change back to make sure that I'm using, I am using that Harvard one, which is the one that you're using now. So let's say I want to refer to Koira again, okay? So I just make the argument here. Koira earlier had stated this. Now, I want to cite him again. And now you must be a little bit careful, all right? So I come along here, I click on Add Edit Citation. I start to type in the Koira, and notice what it's showing me now, okay? Earlier on, when the first time I cited him, I had only my library. It's showing it from there, but it's also now at the top here, it's got another listing which says cited. And the thing is, you must always select from the cited, because you're telling it that this is the same one that I cited earlier. All right. Version 6 seems to have tightened this up nicely, and from what I've seen, if you select my library, it will still work nicely, but I would not recommend that you take a chance. All right, so you select from there, and you know that that's the one. It's the one that is already cited. Okay, and you click on there like that, and you get that there. Right, because I saw certainly in version 5 that if you selected from my library again, it would think that it was a different paper. Okay, so you do it like this. In fact, what I often do is I sort of cheat a little bit. I'm going to take that out. All right, I'm just going to highlight that and delete that. When I'm working, I cheat. Now I'm going to show you this cheat because people ask me, is it possible to do it? Yes, it is possible to do it, but just be careful. All right. So where you can actually just say, you know what, I can just highlight that whole thing there, Control C, Control V, and just make sure that you get it. So that cheat certainly works. And I show it to you because people ask me if it can be done, and yes, it can be done, but you must just be a little bit careful. But at least that way, if you do it like this, then you know that you're getting exactly the same citation there. All right, and that's then how you reuse. And of course, if you are using the Vancouver style, well, then let's see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to change this back to the Vancouver style and watch what happens. It sorts that out nicely. It knows that that one there is the same as that one there. And so that's why it really is important to make sure that you either copy and paste like that there, or you select from that one where it's already cited. Okay, so you make sure, because the last thing you want is to have a 4 over here and then it's listing Quora as 4, and oh my goodness me, it can be fixed up, but what it means is that you have to delete all those and then copy and paste, as I actually had to do for one of my students last week. It's one of those things that happens, and especially it happens when people are starting off and they're learning. Okay. Now I want to come back to this issue of the field, okay? And I spoke briefly about this because you might not be familiar with the concept that this is a field. And essentially a field, those of you who have created tables of contents or index, you'll understand that the concept is the same. In the field, it's showing you information, but it's drawing that information from somewhere else. Okay, and in this case, it's drawing the information from Zotero. The important thing is that if you want to change anything here, you do not make the change here. You make the change in the place from where the information is being drawn, and then you refresh. So let's say you have a look at this and you realize, oh, actually, I typed this information in manually, and I put 2003, and now I've looked and I've seen it's not 2003, it's actually 2002. Okay, you do not make the change here, please. Right, the moment you see a field, you know that you have to go to the source. You make the change in the source. So I go back to my Zotero library. I find that reference, there it is there. I come along here to the date, and I change the date to 2002. Okay, I move off that field just to make sure that it's going to be saving it, and you'll see mine actually syncs automatically. I don't know if you saw my little sync button just went there immediately. And now I return to my document, okay, and I click on refresh and watch what happens. I click on the refresh, and that 2003 changes to 2002. So I really want to emphasize that, because if you make a change here and then you do a refresh, well, whatever's going to happen, things are going to go wrong, because sometimes it might, depending on how fields are working in Word, sometimes it might override your field, sometimes it might not. I mean, I don't know what would happen. Let's just do this, because the reason I don't know what would happen is because I never do it, right? And let's say it should have the in there. And then I do a refresh and it's just messed it up. Okay, you're not going to do that. If it needs a the in it, let's say for some reason I added this manually, whatever, then I would come there and I make the change there, and then I do a refresh. Okay, so please do not change fields there. You change them in the source. Okay, so now let's have a look at synchronizing with other computers. And again, I've spoken quite a lot about the synchronizing. So the advantage of using the sync is to upload your references to the Zotero server. And it means that if you use Zotero on any other computer, then when you first enter Zotero, okay, so what will happen is that you go to, let's say you are sitting working at home now, you go to a computer lab on campus or in your computer in your office. You've got your Zotero account, you know what your Zotero username and password is. You've got Zotero installed on that computer. You enter Zotero, and if your settings are set to sync automatically, it will then sync automatically, or otherwise, as you go in, you simply click on the sync. And what it does is it looks for the latest version. So if you've been sitting on your laptop and you've uploaded 5 new documents onto that web area, right? Then when you go to your office, when you click on sync, it will download those 5 and it will put them onto your database in your office. And then when you make any changes in your office and you sync from there, then when you get back home and you sync again, it will download again. And so it works like that, so that you make sure that you have, wherever you are, you have your references with you. And of course, it's really useful if you're, if you happen to lose your computer, and I know that people do not back up as often as they should, but if that happens to you and you lose all your references, no problem. You simply reinstall Zotero on your new laptop and you sync and everything will be downloaded. Of course, if you've got a few thousand references, you'll have to wait a little bit, but it's all there. Okay. Now let's look at setting up some folders and groups, because you can see that it's okay. I've got my library there and I've only got 4 items in there, but maybe I want to create folders, all right? And I mentioned at the beginning that Zotero uses the metaphor of a library. And so the folders are called new collection. And there's are things to remember, but let's have a look at what happens. Come along to new collection. And then it asks you for the name. And I'm just going to type in workshop because that's for this particular workshop. Click on OK. And essentially it's like a folder. All right. So you'll see that it's got it there and there's nothing in it at the moment. Okay. I've got the stuff in my library, but I've got nothing in my folder. Now you need to concentrate a little bit on how these things work, because you can drag and drop any of the articles into any of the collections. Okay. So let's say I'm going to just take these 2, and under normal circumstances, I would take them all, but I want to show you what the difference is. I take them and I drag them into the My Workshop area. I click on there and they are there. And I click on the My Library and they are there. Now, I have not moved them. Okay. There are things that you need to be very, very aware of. The items in the collections are identical to the items in the main list. They are not duplicates or copies. They are the same thing, just a different view. This means that if you change the items, it will change both views. Okay, so what I mean is that I've got them there. This is showing you an overview. This is showing you the same stuff, but just divided as you wanted it divided, but it's the same thing. So in other words, if I come along here, I go back to my Koira. If I change that back to 2003, okay, if I go into my workshop, oops, yeah, okay, my workshop was not, let me change one of the others. I thought I had brought that in. Let's say I've changed, what have I got in there? I've got that one. So, okay, let's say that is wrong, and that's 100. Okay, then I go there, I do the sync, I come back into my workshop and I go there and notice it's changed that there, because the stuff that I've got in the workshop, the stuff that I've got in these collections, this is simply a different view, right? All my references are there. This is just like a subdivision, but it's the same thing. Okay, the articles are the same. Now, that has a bit of a disadvantage. If people are not aware of that and they think, okay, I'll change in one, you can't change in one and it's not changing in the other. You change in one, it changes in the other, right? So the advantage is that any article can be in multiple collections. So I might decide like this is useful for this one, but I'm also doing another piece of research dealing with, let's see, leadership. Let's see, leadership. And I also want that one to be in the leadership. So you'll see it's in there and it's in there, right? Because it's not actually a duplicate. It's more like it's just linking back. Think of it as linking back to there, right? These are not different items. It's not like you've added or duplicated or copied. It's exactly the same thing. You can delete an article from a collection and it stays in the other collection. So let's say I decide I don't want it here. All right, I can delete it from here. Right? Notice I'm removing it from this collection, but I haven't removed it from there and I haven't removed it from there. But be careful, if you delete it from my library, then it's deleted from all the collections. So if I decide I'm going to come here and I delete it from there, right, it warns me I'm moving it to the trash. I'm not deleting it from a collection. I'm actually deleting it from trash. So if I delete it there, when I go back here, it's gone. All right. So just be careful. Think carefully about how you do that. Right. And you'll see these are ones that I've been using with. Okay, using. Let me just check. There's someone in the chat. Can I cite from the web directly? Yes, sir asks, can I cite from the web directly? Yes, you can, and we will get to that later on. You'll see how that gets done. And Zotero does it really nicely. Okay, now the next thing we want to do is we want to talk about collaboration, and this is now you're going to be creating groups, and this is where you can then really collaborate with people in other countries and elsewhere, because groups are different. Groups can be read from anyone that you allow to have access to. All right, so let's have a look at what we're going to do with these groups. You need to be online, obviously, because you're going to be using the internet for this. And the other people also probably obviously need to have Zotero accounts because they need to be able to access your information. So how are we going to be creating a new group? We're going to go into the new library icon and select new group. Okay, so come along there, come along to that one, and I click on new group. And watch what happens. It actually opens up my browser, jumps to my browser, and I'm now logging in to my area that I created. All right, I told you that when you synchronized and you created your account, you created your account on Zotero. Well, now you can log into that area as well. You will see I have two accounts because I've logged in before, and I've stored my username and passwords here. So I'm selecting that one, and I log into Zotero. All right, so now I'm going to create a new group. Okay, and I'm going to be calling my group Zotero Workshop. In your case, you would call it, you normally call it, and I'll show you some examples in my other account. You normally name it after your research project, or if you're working with a student, you might want to use the student number or the student ID, something like that, so that you know your group. Then you can decide on the membership type. I would recommend when you start off that you choose private membership, all right, to make sure that only people that should have access to it do have access to it. Right? And this is all in the notes again. You don't have to worry too much about this. I've got it here. There, select the private membership and then click on create group, and then you get a confirmation dialog box. Okay, so you create the group. Oopsie, I'm not sure why it was an invalid name. Maybe because somebody else has just done that as well. Okay, so let me just put in a few random numbers. Oh, I don't know why I'm getting odd. Okay, for some reason it didn't want to accept. Maybe it doesn't like to have the name Zotero in there. That was the only thing that I saw that was in there. Maybe it doesn't like to have the word Zotero in there. Anyway, so my group has now been created, and this is showing me my settings, and you'll see that it's got the basic structure there, that it's a private group, which is what I requested. Okay, and if I come down here, we'll see that we've got a thing that speaks about file editing, who can actually do any file edits. And what I would recommend is when you start off, that you select only group admins. And what does this mean? This means that only one person can actually add and change the stuff that is in the database. Because if you allow everyone to change, there's the risk that you'll overwrite each other's changes. Okay, on all my projects that I work on, only the group admin does it, except one project I'm working on at the moment where everybody can make changes, and I can see there are already problems. So I would strongly recommend that essentially one person does all the changes. That person is in charge of doing that. If anyone finds a new reference, a new PDF or whatever, the DOI, they can email it to that person and that person adds it in. All right, so I would strongly recommend that you do this. And then you click on the save settings just to save it. And then you now need to invite the other members. So you click on member settings and you'll see that it shows me, all right, there's my one account and I am a member. And now I'm going to send an invitation to somebody, right? Because now I want to invite somebody else. I'm going to send an invitation and I need to know their email address. So I click on send invitations, and I'm actually going to send it to my other account, because then I can show you what happens with the other account, all right? See. So I'm going to invite myself there, and I click on invite members. All right, so now it tells me that this invitation has been sent. Okay, so what happens? I'm going to then log out of here because I'm going to be using my other account, right? So you can stay logged in on yours if you want, but I'm going to log out of here. If I go into Zotero in the meantime, I might want to just sync. And when I sync, look at what happens there. You'll see now I've got a group area. I will come back to how we use this just now, but I've got a group libraries, and there's my workshop area. Okay. Now, let me close this because I'm going to now switch to my other personality. So I'm going to close my Zotero here. And with my other personality, I go into my Gmail and I see, hey, I've got an invitation. And I click on there. And I see, yes, I've got an invitation now to join this group. And now I click on the link. Right. And now I'm going to log in. And I say it because I want to now join this group. So I'm going to log in. I'm using my other account. Okay, that's the account that I'm using. I log into Zotero. And I need to physically say join, okay, and I can decide, no, I don't want to be part of your group, all right, but in most cases, obviously, the person would want to join, and I then join. Okay, and I log out. Now, when I go into Zotero using that new account. This is the one that I've just been invited. Just see here. Hang on, which one am I using? I'm still, I think it's got both of them up. That's why, because that was still open. Okay, let's see. I go in now, and this is now my my Gmail account, and you will see that I have folders there. You'll see I've got quite a few libraries, and you will see there's the workshop. Okay, and that's the workshop one that was created by the student account. And so anything that gets put in here by that account, I can actually see and I can actually cite. Right. So that's how the sharing works. I'm going to close this and return to the other account so that we can see how this actually works and how we use these. So let me go back in there. All right. So now, okay, I deleted that information. Now, working with these groups is a little bit different from working with the folders here. And again, you need to concentrate a little bit here because, all right, so there you will see the new group. As I say, when you've got more than one person in the group, although everybody can edit, there's a risk that you would overwrite each other's work, all right? And so that's why, excuse me, I said that you should have only one person doing the editing. Then, when you create your new reference, when you insert your new reference, I recommend that what you do is you create it here, as you've done before, right? As we've done before, and it's in my library. You can create a folder if you wish, that's okay. And you make sure that everything is correct. And then what you do is you drag it down into the group. Now you've got to be careful because, as I say, how it works is slightly different from this. I drag it down into the workshop group and it's there, okay? But it is a copy. It is not the same thing, all right? There's my original there. There I've put there. It is a copy, which means that if I come along here and I notice that there's an error and I change that to 2002, right? It's fine, I can sync and all the rest of it. But if I come here to the workshop and I look at that, it still says 2003. It's a copy. These two are not linked at all. And of course, that makes sense because I do not want, if somebody else comes in here and if I have granted them rights to change things and they change things here, I don't want them changing it in my library. They don't have access to my library, okay? But it's really important for you to remember that that thing there and that thing there, they are not linked at all. If a change happens to the one, it does not affect the other one at all. Okay, so you create it there in the My Library and then you drag it down and you put it there. Now, again, because these are two different things, you need to be careful now when we come to citing because watch what can happen. Let's say I'm going to talk about Koira again. Okay. Just say something like this, argued this. Now I want to cite him. Now I come to the add edit citation and I'll type in, I'm going to type in a bit more so that I can make sure that I get, watch what I've got now. I've got the cited, which I know is the one that I've got there. I've got the My Library, which is the one that I put in, and it's showing in the workshop. Okay, it's showing what I've got here. Now watch what happens if I select that. It thinks it's a different item. Okay, I need you to think about that a little bit because you can imagine that this is going to cause a nightmare. So How do you make sure that you don't get this problem? Well, what you have to do is you're collaborating on a group, on a group project. You have all your references here. You add them in first. All right. If you know that you're collaborating on a group project, you add them in first. And then you do the work here. If you find yourself that, let's say you started working on it and now you've got yourself into this position and now you think, oh my goodness me, now what do I do? All right. Well, firstly, what you want to do is say to yourself, okay, let me just make sure this is not going to happen with the others. So I'm going to have to, this is why it's important for you to do a bit of planning beforehand. If you realize, actually, I need all of these to be there. So I'm going to take that one and I'm going to put it there because I want to share this with everybody. I want to make sure that everybody in my group can actually work with that. Then you can see that these numbers this is going to be a problem. And so this is where you then have to sit and you have to fix it up, which is why planning beforehand, really, really important. Think about the research. Think about what you're going to be using. The moment you start writing and the moment you realize that you want to use something and you've got it here, you drag it onto there and you use it always only from there. But it can happen that this kind of thing has happened. Well, in that case, you're going to simply have to replace these with that one. So again, so you do a little bit of a manual stuff. You know that that is the one that you actually want. Okay, so then you Control C, you go in there. You got to be careful. I would recommend that you make a copy of your document so that you don't lose stuff. Go there. Don't worry about the fact that the numbers are all wrong. Okay, we'll do a refresh and we'll sort that out. Okay, so you've got that there. We do a refresh and there we are. We've got that sorted out. We know we're going to have the same problem with that McKim because when we first cited it, we cited it from there, but now it's actually part of our shared area. So add the citation, go get it, go get from the workshop. Make sure you've got that. Okay, and you know that you're going to then take that out. And that's the only place that we use it. So then you do a refresh, and then I'm not going to do it here. You know what to do now. You do it with the who as well, and so that in future, then when if we were going to be doing another thing with Quora, working hard there, right? That add the citation. We know that it's there, correct, and you can then select that because we know that the cited is from the workshop. Okay, so. The thing to remember is that you want to keep track of what's going on with your references. Now, when I'm typing, I usually have my references on screen as well. And it's not always possible, especially when you have a very, very long document. So what I'll show you is a little thing that exists in Word that most people don't know about. It's got nothing to do with Zotero, but you can have a view where you can split your screen, okay? You'll see I actually have it here in my quick access toolbar because I use it a lot. But if you go to the view and you come along to split, and you can split your screen like this. This is not a copy. This is the same document, but it allows me to work up here and I'm typing in here. And let's say if I want to add something, see, my document's messing around a little bit here. All right. But in fact, you can see that does demonstrate that it appears in both. But if I want to cite McKim again, all right, I can then cite from here, add citation. And I'm going to get that. And I click on that, and it allows me just to check my references and see, yep, okay, it's not like it's added in something new or whatever. If I am adding in something new, then I can check my references. You can change the size of this as you wish, right? And then when you decide you don't want it anymore, then you can just turn it off and go like that. It's fine. Splitting the screen like that is something I use a lot, which is why I have it sitting up here in my quick access toolbar. But that's just a an aside when you're working with larger documents in MS Word. Okay, I know we've covered quite a lot of ground. We do still have a bit to go. But one of the things I want to show you now is when you're adding references from PubMed, because many people will get things from PubMed, all right, or from any other place like EBSCOhost or something like that. And so you can actually export the bibliographic information nicely and easily. So let's say I'm going to go into PubMed, and I'm going to do a quick search. Okay. Let's say I'm just going to pick up something here. Diabetes. I usually use this as an example with my students. And you will see that some of them have free articles, some of them don't. And again, it will depend on where you are. Does your library have access to it? Are these open access articles, etc., or not? What I'm going to do is I'm going to select a couple here. Most of these don't appear to be open access. Try and see. I think the first one was right, but some of them are not. Let me select a couple here. Okay, so I've selected the articles that I want. This is not a PubMed lesson, so I can't teach you how to use PubMed. I'm teaching you just how to get the bibliographic information out. And you're going to select Send to and Citation Manager. And different systems work differently. As I say, if it's EBSCOhost, you save as a file, and your file type is usually a .ris. That's a very common file type. But in this case, you can just select Citation Manager. All right, Send to Citation Manager. It tells you that you're going to have 5 articles, and then you create the file. Okay, now you need to decide where you want to put this file. You'll see I've already been practicing. I'm going to overwrite that file, all right? So, and you want to make sure that you have I'm going to put it in there. So the only thing is that you need to remember where you saved your file. Usually when I save my files, I also put a date on them, so I know exactly when I downloaded this, and what this covered, where it came from, etc. Okay. And there it is there. Now I save that as a file, and it has only the bibliographic information. It doesn't have the documents themselves. Okay. So if I go back into this, I've done this part, and I've created the file. Now I go into Zotero, and I'm going to import that information. And I select File, Import, and I leave it there as default of a file, and I click on Next. And then I will show you what happens here, but you can decide you want to put these files into their own little collection, yes or no. And then with the file handling, copy the files to the Zotero storage folder, because sometimes there are associated files there. You can copy them into the Zotero storage folder. I generally leave that on. Okay, so let's go along here. I make sure that I've selected my library. File, import. Okay, and then it asks me for the file type. Leave that file type, but this also answers a question that was asked earlier on about getting information from elsewhere. I can import from Mendeley, all right, and that's how I import. If if the system that you're using, like EBSCOhost or so, asks you for file types, then probably select the RIS file type. That is a very, very common file type, and just about any reference manager can read RIS. All right, it's like the CSV of Excel. All right, so we leave that there. It's a file, and you click Next, and then we go and get our file, and I click on Open. And it asks me, do I want this in its own collection? All right, and so I'll leave it. I'll say yes, leave it in its own collection, and yes, leave that there as well. Sometimes I turn that on, sometimes I turn that off, depending on what I want to do with it, but I will leave that on for now. And I click on Next, and it imports. Okay, now I've got these, and I've got You can see that I've got it there. I can rename that if I don't want it. But now what I can also do is I can ask Zotero to search for those PDFs. Okay. And how do I do that? I highlight the file, right click, and I say find available PDF. Now what it will do is it will use the DOIs, okay, which again, you'll see like in this case, there's no DOI. And so it probably will not be able to find where it does have a DOI. If it's then open access, or if there's a version that the journal allows, it will then find it. But if there's no DOI, then it can't find it. Okay, so I highlight those articles, I click on, I right click and I say find available PDFs. And now it's searching. And there were only 3 that had DOIs, and it's searching. There it can't find, unfortunately. Sometimes you have success, sometimes you don't. Oh, that one won't get either. So these are all behind paywalls, and there's unfortunately nothing you can do. Or like for my case, I'm sitting at home at the moment, so it doesn't recognize that I'm on campus, and so it won't be able to access anything. Okay, so it's useful if it does actually find it, and you have various degrees of success. As I say, one of the things it does require is a DOI. And so if this article doesn't have a DOI, or if the DOI is not stored in the article's metadata, then it won't be able to find it. Then you've got to do a little bit of the old style hunting. And then just like we did last time, when you find the PDF file, you download it, you save it, then you right click and add attachment, and you browse then to where you have stored that file. Okay. Now in your document, we're getting close to the end, so hang in there. In the document, you have your fields. Okay, and now you've got your final document, and this is fine. This is the paper that you want to submit to the journal, and the journal says you have to remove all fields, because the journals are going to take your document and they're going to be processing them, and some journals do not want these fields. It messes with their own system. They want plain text. Okay, so what do? All right, well, you're going to use this command here with the unlink citations, but what I strongly recommend that you do is you make a copy of your document. Because once you unlink your citations and they're not linked, you will not get them back. Okay, there's no ways to afterwards tell Zotero that one actually refers to something down here. That's not going to happen. So you make a copy of the document. So you've got your document like this. So let's say I save this, okay, and I close it. I like to actually do it properly like that, and I come in there. Where's my file? There's my workshop document. Let's say this is the one I'm going to submit. Do Control C, Control Z, and then I maybe call it for submission, because I do not want to mess with my original. I want my original always to be there. Okay, so then I open up that document there. Okay, and now I go into Zotero and I unlink citations, and you get a warning. All right, removing field codes will prevent Zotero from updating citations, bibliographies in this document. Be sure you want to continue. You make sure that yes, you're looking at your copy, so that's okay, and you click on OK, and that's it. Okay, because now if I click in there, notice that's just normal plain text. Okay, that is not anything special. That's just plain text. So you make sure then that you do this on the copy that you are submitting, so that when your reviewers get back to you and they say they want changes to be made and all the rest of it, you still have your original document. And here it is, and all your fields are there. Okay. So when you remove fields, please don't do it from your original document. And yeah, if you do it, please don't email me and say, how do I get it back? I've got bad news for you. Okay, multiple citations and merging. One of the weaknesses of Zotero, is probably about the only thing that I do not like about Zotero, is that at this stage, if you have, let's say, Kim and McLean and Koira, okay, said this. And now I want to add Koira in there as well. Okay, so at this stage, you can't merge them. You know how you would have to do like open brackets and then you've got the 1 and then the semicolon and 2 and whatever. You can't actually do that. So what you do is you simply add him the way that you would do. You know that he's going to be number 1, so that's okay, right? So you can go into the Zotero and add citation, right? And make sure that it's from the cited. And you've got it like that. Okay. And so then what you do is you do that for all of yours. So you know that, in fact, some journals are already publishing like that, but generally they still don't like that. So you can do it like that. And then you wait until you get to the stage where I'm going to delete that one and make another copy. Okay. You get to the stage where you're ready for submission, and it's at this stage that you then making your copy, you're making a new file, and you go into it, and then you unlink your citations, and then you have to do a little bit of manual work where you then go like that, okay, or 1 to 2 or whatever the particular style is that they want. So that is one of the things that that is a bit of an irritation with Zotero, because in Mendeley, when you had them together, you could highlight them and you could say merge and it would actually do it, which is a nice thing. But Zotero doesn't do it, and at this stage they don't seem to have an idea that they do want to do it. So hopefully they will do it in the future. So that's a small irritation. Okay. Okay, and then we get to another question that was asked now, what about web pages? Let's add web pages. Okay, so what you can do now is you can install a connector. We spoke earlier on about this connector, and I said we would get to it. So you do need to install a connector, and you can do it either with Firefox or Chrome. It's essentially a browser extension. Okay, so I'm going to do it here. You can follow me if you want to, or you can just watch what I'm going to be doing, because you can see it's a reasonably straightforward process. I already do have it installed in my browser, but essentially you go along to that URL. If you do want to, let me just go quickly into. If you do want to, I'll put the URL in there. So the URL's in the chat. Okay. And you want to get the connector. All right. So you click on install Firefox connector. I'm not going to do it because I've already got it and I don't want to mess with what I've already done. But essentially you install it, and then it will be installed as a plugin, and it recognizes in this case that I'm using Firefox. If you're using Chrome, then it will see it as a Chrome extension and it will install it. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you how to actually use it and what the effect of this connector is, because this makes life a lot easier. Right, but I do have the instructions here. You click on the continue to add, you then continue to the installation, and once you've installed it, you will then see in your browser that you have that little icon there. Okay, so now let's say I want to go find, I'm going to go to up to date, which is usually my fallback position when I want to demonstrate anything. And I want to go to a particular page. I want to find something here. let's get a nice article, something in here. Okay, so this one might be really, really complex because I see it's got frames, and we'll see. It's because sometimes it won't be as optimal as we would like. I should have rather just chosen something simple, but well, let's just see what actually happens. I come along here and I look at this and I say, okay, this is what I actually want now. I want this document, okay? And so I've make sure that my Zotero is open, okay? And I then come along to that little icon there and I click on it, and it's telling me that it's now saving to my library. And you'll notice it says resources, and then it said snapshot, and at first the snapshot was grayed out, and then it is now showing in proper black. All right, and again, it's very dependent on your internet speed. So if it's taking a long time, if you've got a slow speed, then it's going to take a little while. So now let's go back to Zotero and let's have a look at what you've got in Zotero. Now, of course, when it reads from articles and you've got DOIs, you've got all the metadata and stuff like that, it can read all the authors, it can read everything. When it's reading from web pages, that information is often not correctly stored, it's not written, it's not stored in metadata. So you're going to find yourself having to do a little bit of editing here. Okay, and so you come back to this and you see, okay, so this is Peter Cohen. So you're going to have to go in here and change the author's name. He spells it like that. And if you want to, then you can put in the section editors and things like that. But there you've got it written there. But now watch here. Come along here and you'll see that it's got that. And if you click on that or double click on that, you'll see that, oopsie, it didn't do much of a good page. I think these frames actually messed it up completely. Right? So in this case, all right, I did not intend to do this, but in this case, you'll see this is a case where in fact it didn't work well. Right? And I think the problem is because this document is working in frames. So yeah, let me look to see if I can find one that is a little bit more simple. In fact, we can actually use, I don't know what, I can find something that is a little bit more simple that doesn't use frames. Or are they all using, that's a PDF anyway. Ah, those are all PDFs. I'm just looking for a simple web page. My goodness. That's leaflets. Okay, that's not there. Let's go back here to an article. They're using these. All right, well, you're gonna have to take my word for it because I'm worried that we're running out of time, but you're gonna have to take my word for it that it does actually work. I think they've updated a lot of their stuff and put this into frames, and that, so frames, it looks like frames doesn't work so nicely when it comes to working with web pages. Let's forget a simple Wikipedia article. I don't know if that will. Okay, I'm hoping that will be a bit more straightforward. All right, so it's showing the icon there is a little bit different. and Wikipedia has its own thing, but let's just see what you've got there. It could be quite large, but let's see. And of course, then with the Wikipedia, you'd have to change also with the authored information, right? But it's got that there, and then let's go into Zotero, and you'll see there's the information there, and there's your snapshot, and you open up. And the thing that I wanted to show you is that it's actually reading this. Look where it's reading it from. Because I picked it up from Zotero, it's actually reading it. It stored this on my Zotero area. Okay, so it stored this in my Zotero folder. So this is a copy of the web page. And the advantage of this is, of course, is because web pages change. And when web pages change and you've got a version and you are citing something and somebody says, no, that's not what that page says, it says something else. And then you look and you see, my goodness me, it does say something else. What did I do wrong? And it's because it's changed since you last used it. So obviously the first thing is to make very, very sure that you've got the date, and you'll see it actually automatically includes the date, right? So you want to make sure that you've got the date, but the advantage of having the snapshot is that you can show and you can prove quite easily that, well, when I looked at it, this is what the page actually looked like. But so as we have seen though, as I demonstrated without really intending to, if it's got frames, then it might cause problems. So generally what I also do say, and I say this to my students, if you do have problems, let's say for instance, you can't, like if the web page, firstly, it doesn't conform to any standard, so it doesn't add an author or things like that. But let's say, like in my case, I wanted to get that that item wherever it was, and it was in frames, and now I've got this, and it's not doing it well. Then what I recommend to my students is then you simply highlight that entire area. You Control-C, you Control-V it into a Word document, and then you save that Word document, and then save that Word document as a PDF. And then in a Zotero, then you come along and you can add it here. Because of course you don't only have to have one file added here, because sometimes I haven't dealt with this, but let's say this particular file also has, if it has appendices, then you can add more, right? There's no limit to the number of files that can be added to it. So let's say if this file was actually an appendix, you can then put it in there and you can see there it is there. Okay, so you can have appendices and things like that, because many files do. Okay, and although it's not part of our workshop, you can also use Zotero with Google Docs and LibreOffice. I haven't actually used it with those, so I can't really teach you anything about that, but there is documentation on it. So if you do use Google Docs and LibreOffice, then you can use Zotero with that. Okay, and this appendix is just what to do if your Zotero tab doesn't install properly. This was a problem with version 5. It seems to be less of a problem with version 6, but it might occur. And if it does occur, there are two useful YouTube videos that you can watch, one for Windows, one for Mac. I know that this document does have quite a few things, URLs and things like that. That's why I will be loading this document into my Google Drive shortly after the workshop. Okay, so that's all that I want to cover. I'm going to stop sharing at the moment. We don't have much time, but we have about 5 minutes. If there are any further questions, if people would like to ask me questions, please go ahead, either in the chat or in with your microphone.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I enjoy your lecture, but I would like to ask if you have saved the files you would like to distribute among the colleagues and the students. Thanks for your help.
Yeah, my pleasure. As I say, the files that I've used and this Word file that I've been looking at, I will put it into my Google Drive, and this recording will go into Google Drive also into that same place, and then you can get everything from there.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Ken, for that excellent workshop. And thank you for the participants for their patient, listening and to carry on with the workshop. And I can promise you that this particular tool is so good that whenever you write a paper, you're going to be blessing Dr. Ken, as I keep doing. So I remember when I talked to him first about the study, and I said, we'd love to have you on board. And he was so generous. He said, yes, why not? And since then, the first thing he did was tell me, come and learn Zotero. And I said, what am I getting myself into? I mean, this is a study on UTI. Why am I doing Zotero? And after that, when he made me do it, I realized how useful it is and how easy to use it is. And thank you so much, Dr. Ken. He said it right from the beginning that, when we have this study, we start this study, I'm going to do a workshop on Zotero. And I said, that's a great place for us to share this wonderful tool and from a wonderful teacher like Dr. Ken. And I appreciate Dr. Faizabadi's comments and his interest. And please do share with your students and with your colleagues, because there's one thing which I really appreciate with Dr. Ken, and our study really believes in sharing our knowledge. Our study is capacity building and human resource building, and it should be free and easily available to everyone. And that is really one of our lead motive: share and grow together. I learned a lot of that from Dr. Ken. Thank you, Dr. Ken. Thank you, everyone. And please do ask your questions right now, if you have them. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. As Dr. Hiba says, that people can learn a little bit about Zotero, but there's so many extra little things. And so that's why attending a workshop like this, I hope, has proven to be very useful.
Yes, and I'm happy to tell you that Dr. Hiba is my student and very, very honhar. In India, we say honhar, a very able student. And so is Dr. Asfiya from my prior institution. I'm very happy to tell you we have people from Turkey, from Iran, from Sudan, Nepal, India, and Pakistan who have attended the workshop. And I'm really very, very thankful to them. And of course, thankful to you, Dr. Ken, for taking out your very important time. And thankful to everyone for taking out their important time for attending it.
Good, sure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are scheduled to finish in 2 minutes, but I'm quite happy to stay for longer if people have other questions. So, yeah.
We will have a YouTube of this, which I'll be sharing with all our centers. So Dr. Faisal will be getting a YouTube as well as links otherwise also to the documents and stuff like that. All that will be shared.
Okay.
Thank you. Also, if people are still here who are part of this study, please share your photos, because we're building a website and we'll want to have your photos on the website. Thank you so much. Yes, Dr. Asfiya, we will be sharing the recording and PDF of the presentation. And Dr. Asfiya, as I told you, is one of our very, very able microbiologists from Aligarh Muslim University. Ah, there we can see her.
Yeah, welcome.
Please, can we open our cameras and I'll just take a quick photo and, a memory for the workshop. Thank you so much. There's Dr. Asfiya, Dr. Faizabadi, Dr. Yavuz, Dr. Sneha, Dr. Shruti, Dr. Bigya, and Dr. Mutaman. I can see many of them. Great, great having you all. Let me just take a quick screenshot. That's great. And there's Dr. Aftab Durrani from Pakistan and from Turkey. It's great, wonderful. Thank you so much. And Dr. Yavuz and Dr. Ghazi is from Iran, I know. Dr. Adila is from Qatar. Oh yeah, so we have from Qatar as well.
Oh, good. Good wide range. Excellent.
Yeah. Yes, so that's really, really a lovely international workshop, and thank you so much for that once more. Dr. Mutaman, where are you from? Not sure right now. Okay. Dr. Matifan, how are you?
I'm fine.
To see you here. Dr. Matifan is from Ethiopia and one of our ASM ambassadors as well. And I don't know what is the name here. Please introduce yourself. I can see another person next to Dr. Faizabadi. Will you please tell us where you're from?
I'm from Ethiopia.
I see. Oh,
Yes.
that's splendid. Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Lovely. Dr. Faizabadi, we'll be meeting you soon when we have a meeting on the introductory part of the study, and then we'll launch into the study as well with you. Dr. Sidasi, where are you from? If you can unmute and tell us. And Dr. Mudaman. That's okay. So I think we've crossed the time. Thank you so much. You will be getting lovely. Bye-bye.
Okay.
And thank you everyone. Dr. Asfiya, lovely seeing you once again. Dr. Faizabadi, bye-bye. Lovely. And from Tokyo, what's your name? I don't know your name, but lovely having you there. And Matifan, Dr. Kane, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you very much all.
Thank you. Bye.